Oh, hi, didn't see you there. I was too busy setting up the recording for this video that you're watching now. You know, when you take a bit that's overcomplicated and not very funny, things tend to be underwhelming, not very interesting. The setup to this joke wasn't really that good, was it? Let me tell you a little bit about Pokemon Mystery Dungeon Gates to Infinity. Look, I'm not gonna lie to you, my favorite young adult novel in my growing up era was Pokemon Mystery Dungeon Red Rescue Team, and then later Explorers of Sky. And, you know, I'm not a furry right now, but like, you know, there was a real possibility that I could have been. But I'm not. Look, I love the Mystery Dungeon franchise. It's one of my favorite game franchises of all time. Pokemon Mystery Dungeon Explorers of Sky is like a top tier game for me. It's like a 97 out of 100. It's a great game and I love it very much. I skipped Gates to Infinity when it first came out because, like, I don't know, I just didn't buy it. It didn't really appeal to me. The fact that there were only Unova starters, and then you didn't even have to do like a questionnaire, and then, oh, it turns out it's only Unova Pokemon, you know, that just didn't really interest me that much. And then I remember Super Mystery Dungeon came out, and that game was very exciting because Wailord was back. Oh my god. Wailord, my beloved. And so I didn't play Gates to Infinity until much later in my life. What I'm trying to get at here is that Pokemon Mystery Dungeon Gates to Infinity was a game that I just overlooked. I played the demo, and then I just kind of moved on. And that was okay. Years later, the Nintendo eShop shut down, and for these kinds of games is in full swing, so naturally, you know, being the I am, I decided to give Gates to Infinity a try. Gates to Infinity is a stupid little game where your dipshit little partner wants to save the world with the power of friendship because the world is too evil, and everyone's like, I don't trust you and I'm evil, I'm gonna mug you and everything. What's the deal with that, huh? My experience with Gates to Infinity and my overall opinion of it comes down to basically this statement. Gates to Infinity is really overcomplicated in its design, and it's really, really undercomplicated, like oversimple even, in its dungeon exploration. You play Explorers of Sky and they're like, oh, you can go to Treasure Town and you can, you know, buy some things, and there's multiple screens, and there's the linking, and there's the boxes, and there's like the Spindus Cafe, which is cool. You don't have to go there, but you can. And like, you know, there's the beach, and there's Beach Cave, and it's all like, yeah, I love Beach Cave. Beach Cave is my favorite. It's like you go in there and you go out, nothing to it. But you go in Gates to Infinity and you go along this path, and it's like, where do you want to go? You wake up, you leave your house. Paradise has like 9 spaces, and then you go down, and then there's Girder, and there's the bulletin boards, but then there's also Victini with the V wheel, and then there's Scraggy, and I don't know what that little shit does. I actually do not know what Scraggy did the whole time because I didn't talk with him at all. And then after you leave Paradise too, you go down and you go over, and then like there's a path that goes out that like literally you can't take. Or I don't know, maybe they just didn't let me because it was part of the story. I don't know. And then you go into Post Town, and then Post Town's got the Kecleons and the Cofagrigus. How do you say that word without saying a bad word? And then you got Rampardos and Cinccino and the Traveling Salesman, and it's like, there is so much to do outside of the dungeon crawl, but I only need to talk to Kecleon. You know, like the Kecleon in the box, that's all I need. So why would I go over here? Why would I go over there? Why would I do anything? Why am I talking to Girder to make a little grassy patch to go play the diving game with Starmie with the tilt controls? Why would I do that? It's like 3 minutes of nothing. It's 3 minutes of nothing for what? Like 2 Reviver Seeds? I mean, don't get me wrong, Reviver Seeds are great, but what is this? Why do I care? This is like unhelpful and not relevant. You know, it's just not useful. It's confusing. In my entire time with Gates to Infinity, all I would do is I would go up to the bulletin board, say I want to do this mission, and then like not choose any more than one, mind you, because for some reason they decided doing more than one mission at a time was bad. I know it's been talked to death about commentaries related to this game, but like, it's confusing. It doesn't make any sense. What I came to the conclusion with this is that Gates to Infinity does not want you to grind. That's all I got. And that's weird because the Pokemon Mystery Dungeon formula is just like, grinding is natural. Grinding is a part of the experience. Like, you have to like grinding in order to play this game, because the dungeon crawl is fundamentally grinding. There's way too much to do outside of the dungeon crawl, but then once you get into the dungeons, it's like, you know, in like Red Rescue Team, you go into a dungeon, it's like a square, you go around and go bam, bam, you give the whiffer status, and that's it, it's over, you're done, no more of that for you. You play Gates to Infinity, and it's like, I can see only 2 squares in front of me. Oh boy, that monster that just came into the room, I sure hope I can, figure out what it is. You can't see 2 squares in front of you. Like, I don't know what Pokemon Virizion is fighting. The hallways go on and on. So I am looking at the bottom screen every time I'm crawling through a dungeon. I'm convinced that the way that they made the dungeons in this game was that they designed a bunch of room shapes, and they maybe set like a windiness parameter of sorts, and they had the rooms generated that way so that they could do the 3D. I don't know what the deal with the 3D was, but I think that's how they did it. Because these dungeons are way bigger in terms of floor size, but it's like they're not nearly, they feel way longer, even though it's only 9 floors. I remember going through like 12 floors in Great Canyon, you know, and getting to the top of the Cizatu, and that felt like, you know, maybe a half hour at most. And you go through 10 floors until Lyric Path, and that feels like a fucking hour! Sorry, I peeked the mic there. I don't mean to do that. I apologize. A 10-floor dungeon felt much longer, and way simpler. Beyond the fact that hunger isn't in the game, which honestly, I was okay with. The fact is, the dungeons were like annoying to play. They were difficult to traverse, which I think is one of the most important things when we consider dungeons in the Pokemon Mystery Dungeon franchise. Red Rescue Team and Explorers of Sky both have their dungeon layouts such that you can see everything in front of you and you can plan your strategy out in advance, and ultimately, monsters you encounter change floor to floor, so you're able to constantly have a changing experience throughout. Gates to Infinity is incredibly oversimple in its dungeons because every dungeon tile set up until you get to the Great Glacier arc in the first halfway through the game, every dungeon looks the same. Pokemon don't change throughout the floors. You might be finding the same 9 Pokemon through all 9 floors of the dungeon. You know, it's dumb, it's tedious, and it makes it feel especially repetitive, which is something that is really not good when you're playing a Pokemon Mystery Dungeon game. Gates to Infinity also does this thing where in certain dungeons the floor will open up and you'll have a 3D, 2D, it's not 2.5D. It's like you can go up, down, left, right, but you're viewing it from an isometric perspective, so it feels like it's 3D. They have these sections where you just navigate and you have the encounters just on the field. But these encounters are then mapped to a grid when you encounter the Pokemon. So it's like, what was the goal here? Was there an idea of introducing some dungeon crawling mechanics in this game? They don't elaborate on them. They're only in the first few dungeons and then one late in the game, and then that's it. This just feels really out of place, and it feels very, very anti-Mystery Dungeon, because returning to these dungeons later, you still go through these sections, and these sections are not randomized, except for one where you have to find the right flower to go down the path that's in front of, like, it doesn't matter though, because it's still fundamentally the same puzzle. At least with other randomly generated floor puzzles in Mystery Dungeon Gates to Infinity, you're going about them and the gameplay is new every time to some effect. In these open spaces, it's the same, and if you already know the puzzle's solution, then why do the puzzle in the first place? To flex how cool you are? It's like, oh mom, look, I can solve this puzzle in 5 seconds. That's great, Timmy. That's so good. I'm so proud of you. It's oversimple. So how do they make it harder then? By giving the Pokemon the most obnoxious fucking moves in the whole game. In the 3rd dungeon, there's just Sewaddle with String Shot and Audino, which are tanky as hell, and you can't see either of them when you're in the room because, again, 2 tiles. And so these Sewaddle will String Shot you from tiles away, and then you can't do anything about it. It's dumb. And the Audino just take a ton of damage to kill. In Desolate Canyon, there are Litwick, which have Fire Spin, which immobilize you, Smog, which poison you, and Confuse Ray, which confuse you, so you're just left there for like turn on end for them to just attack you. It's not like it feels fair. You know? Vullaby in Desolate Canyon spams Pluck and eats your Oron Berries and Reviver Seeds. Really the only items you actually need in this game, and that's annoying. And literally all the Pokemon on Kilionia Road with moves like Incinerate or Bug Bite, which just remove items from your bag at the start of the 2nd marathon stretch, is dumb and annoying, and I didn't like it. I get why they did it, and I don't like it. The other aspect of the dungeon crawling that's oversimplified, that like I could have done more with, that I didn't, was the team tactics and the let's go together tactic that we have. There are plenty of tactics throughout this game. There's let's go together, there's follow me, there's go after enemies, yada yada yada. I don't do any of those because those are annoying. In Red Rescue Team and Explorers of Sky, let's go together means that you go together. And it means that when there is an enemy in the room, you do not go after that enemy, you go together. Gates to Infinity, let's go together means let's go together unless an enemy spawns in the room, in which case I'm going to chase after it, and then, oh no, you're not in the room anymore, where do I go? Okay, here's the other fucking thing. Fucking get back here, Emolga!
Don't you love it when your partners just leave you for no reason?
I hate it so much! Carry a roll call orb. Yeah, I know. I can get past the fact that, like, the party members will just go off on their own sometimes. Like so. Like so! I'm not gonna change it at this point, though. I'm gonna complain. Do you see that? Do you see what happened? I walked off. An enemy spawned while I was in the hallway. Virizion was not out of the room. And so as a result, Galvantula shows up and brings it down, and I have to use an Oron Berry. Like, it makes no sense. Why the fuck does my 4 Pokemon party love splitting up, branching off, getting lost, and using up all my Reviver Seeds on just the random chance that, like, oh, they happened upon an enemy? Why does that happen? It makes dungeon crawling a nightmare and unfun. There's no good tactic to do this, because if I changed it to follow me, then they're gonna get in a way. They're not going to fight. It just doesn't make sense. And here's the thing. The game is designed so that your party will have 4 Pokemon. Usually it'll be you, your partner, and then either Virizion, Dunsparce, or Emolga, 2 of those 3, and then Espeon and Umbreon later. The game presents a 2-party adventure as a challenge. So why is it then that navigating dungeons with 4 party members is one of the most infuriating thing I've ever seen in my life? This doesn't happen in the older games. It's dumb. It's so annoying. And like, any attempts to try and fix it don't do anything. They make dungeon crawling actively harder to do, in my opinion. So I come away from Gates to Infinity with this weird, dumb, stupid feeling of like, outside of the dungeon, there's just like way too much shit. I never used the V-wheel. I never spun the V-wheel. I would only be aware of the V-wheel when I got, like, a bonus that was really cool. Like, oh, I don't have to use PP because of the V-wheel. How fucking sweet is that? Or like, oh, this opponent doesn't have to use PP because of the V-wheel and it hits 5 times and it kills me with Fury Attack. And I didn't use any, like, again, I don't know what Scraggy does. I only developed 2 squares of my entire 9-square paradise. I don't know. Maybe with Street Pass, like, there was a way to do this, but in the grand scheme of things, Street Pass no good in the year 2023. I'm sorry, okay? I don't mean to be mean, but I don't bring my 3DS anywhere anymore. That was 10 years ago, man. I'm sorry. It's like Joint Avenue or fucking Sun and Moon. I hate it. And then in the dungeons themselves, not only is it boring, predictable, and hard to distinguish between dungeons themselves until you get to very, very late distinct ones like Tyrian Maze, which is admittedly a pretty cool dungeon, but your party just doesn't want to cooperate. And what are you supposed to do about it besides bring more roll call orbs? I don't get it. There are good things about Gates to Infinity. I actually enjoyed this game's story to some degree. I mean, besides the fact that I did roll my eyes a little bit. I mean, look, I named my partner Lanky Kong, and I named my team name the Fartmongers, so that's always going to get a laugh out of me whenever they have, like, the touching emotional scene, and then they say, we're gonna do this because we are the Fartmongers! Like, I mean, that's comedy, right? So that was good. But in the grand scheme of things, I found myself just really frustrated with Gates to Infinity, which is really too bad. But, you know, here's the thing. Every franchise has to have its worst game. And Gates to Infinity could do a lot worse. I thought Gates to Infinity's story was pretty good. I thought that its music was maybe some of the best in the entire franchise. Like, I mean, it's hard to go wrong with tracks. Like, all of the paths, Great Glacier, Glacier Palace, the whole hills, like, Scorching Desert, Daybreak Ridge, all of those tracks are great. It's just that, you know, presentation only goes so far when the gameplay loop is not that fun. I give Gates to Infinity a fucking... a breath mint, because boy oh boy does its breath stink. But it could be a lot better. How would I change Gates to Infinity? That's a good question. I'd zoom the camera out, for one. And I'm glad that they did that in Super Mystery Dungeon, because it makes the game far more tolerable. I don't know how to end video. Hey, if you enjoyed this video, thanks for watching. I just marathoned this. I took a lot of notes, and I basically wrote them enough to basically do a script and sort of ball out, you know? Like, Gates to Infinity, Gates to Infinity. Whatever, bada bing, bada boom. Another game finished in 2023. If you like this video, please like it, subscribe, comment. Please give me a hug. I need one. And stay tuned for more videos. Yeah, that's all. I appreciate you. Love you. No, I don't love you. No parasocial relationships in this chat. Okay? Okay? Follow me on twitch.tv, VoltageVO, twitch.tv/VoltageVO. You can find me on X as VoltageVO. Yeah. Okay, sure, great. Holy shit, Hydreigon's breaking the fourth wall. That's actually funny.